Welcome to Cultimatum, the podcast that delves deep into the culture and complexities of cults and human trafficking. Your hosts are myself, Anonymous Andrew, and Melody. Each week we explore different facets of cult life and human trafficking.
And I'm Melody. Having experienced the trauma of a cult firsthand, specifically the House of Yahweh, I'm here as an advocate for fellow survivors. My journey has inspired me to help others who find themselves in similar situations.
Our podcast is committed to respecting our guests' privacy. To ensure their comfort and safety, our guests can choose to remain anonymous or use a fake name.
And Andrew, before we get started, we also want to issue a trigger warning. Some episodes may contain potentially disturbing subjects such as sexual abuse, rape, human trafficking, suicide, and other sensitive topics. Discretion is advised.
Hey, Anonymous Andrew here with a quick note. Okay, so in today's episode, we have an actual ex-member of the Twin Flames universe cult. If you listen to my pod series on my podcast, the Anonymous Andrew podcast, I did 7 episodes on the Twin Flames, but I could not get someone to come forward from the Twin Flames universe as an ex-member. I was in negotiations with them, and it just never happened. Well, now that we have a Cultimatum, and my co-host Melody has put a lot of work and promotion and effort, we got someone to come forward. And so what you're going to hear today is part 1 of an episode of somebody who was in the Twin Flames universe cult. Also, you're going to hear next a promo for another podcast. We joined a community, Melody and I, and on my podcast, where we swap trailers to help each other. It's a community of podcasters who are looking to support each other. We don't see each other as competitors. We see each other as independent podcasters who could use support. So take a listen to this. It's like a trailer. It's like a 60-second or 90-second commercial. And give them some support. Give them a listen. Give them a try. And because they're going to be playing our trailer on theirs. So take a quick listen and then on to our episode.
Have you ever wondered what lurks in the dark and misty woods of the Pacific Northwest?
Or how Starbucks became the coffee giant we know today?
Why Oregon has so many serial killers?
Or if Bigfoot really poops in the woods?
Then you need to listen to the Rainy Day Rabbit Holes podcast. I'm Shay.
And I'm Jody.
Join us each week as we bring you the not-so-serious side of Pacific Northwest history.
On our show, you can hear great content like...
This wine smelled to me reminiscent of urinal cake.
Ooh, gosh.
And thoughtful insights like...
Next time I accidentally show up to one of these, I'm just going to whip my out.
There's your tip.
And then I'm going to say, no tip, we're even. Discover the charm and intrigue of this region like never before, where every raindrop leads to a new adventure.
If you like your history hysterical, then join us every week.
Whether you're a Pacific Northwest native, a transplant, or just curious about the upper left corner of North America, this podcast is for you.
Subscribe to Rainy Day Rabbit Holes on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts, and let the rain take you on a wild ride.
See you down the rabbit hole.
Welcome to Cultimatum, the culture of cults and human trafficking. And my name is Anonymous Andrew. And hello, Melody.
Hi, Andrew. We have a super special guest today. Her name is Danielle Storm. And Danielle is an ex-member of the Twin Flames universe. And we are super stoked to have her. Andrew, I'm going to let you explain why we're so stoked.
Yeah, I am jumping out of my chair here because as anybody who listens to my other podcast, I did a 7-episode pod series of the Twin Flames universe. And while I had people who knew about the Twin Flames and knew some of the leaders in the Twin Flames prior to their running the group come forward and talk about it, I couldn't get one member of the Twin Flames or an ex-member to come on the show. And now today we have an ex-member, Danielle Storm. Danielle, welcome to Cultimatum.
Thank you for having me. I am so I'm excited to be able to share my stories that perhaps I can help others come forward, or perhaps others will want to share. You know what I mean? That's my goal, is to get either others to leave or others to come forward and share and realize that it's safe to do so.
Oh, I love that.
That's great because, I love that too. what's happening in TFU is very scary. And the fact, and I'm going to say it right out front, that there were 2 documentaries done on it, and it barely put a dent in their organization. And people are still, well, Danielle, you tell us. So,
Yes.
So when the documentary came out, I was a part of the group. I was direct friends with some of the leaders in the group, and we were talking about it. And they were like, it's just ex-members who have not had a good experience with us, who want to lie and twist the truth. But then, like, I watched the documentary, and I was like, oh my God, this is like similar to what I experienced. You know what I mean? And I was like, I experienced some of the same exact things that they did. And then, like, I also go and I look on the Reddit forums and stuff, and people are saying some of the same repeated things are happening to them as they are exploring the topic of twin flames and getting deeper and deeper into it. So I, the twin flame group, it exploded when the documentary came out. And I remember every day someone was posting, you're in a cult, get out of the cult. There were different things posted throughout, but like it made the group even more popular. So like they didn't lose any followers. They gained followers. So they gained people because other people, so we had 2 different types of people. We had the type of people who, you're in a cult, get out of the cult. And then we had the, I just watched this, I want to find love.
Wow.
You know what I mean? So they were also like drawing in people who like watched the documentary and then were like, I want to find my twin flame. This is real. You know what I mean? Like convinced that this stuff was real and everything. So it was
That
crazy.
actually surprises me. I'm actually glad you're sharing that part of your story because I would not have guessed that. I would not have guessed that would have helped.
I would not have
gain
guessed
them
that.
followers.
No.
I don't think anybody would have. When we were looking at this and this was like blowing up, we were like, I wonder how this is going to turn out. Cause like a lot of us were talking about it. And it turned out kind of to be a blessing in disguise because I think they got like over like 10,000 extra followers from it.
Oh,
and they
God.
have more joining every day. Like it's not something where like, time stopped and they lost followers and lost everything. No, they gained. Which is the scary part because you think that this would prevent people from wanting to join, but it only like made it worse.
Wow.
I don't know why I am dumbfounded over that, but because I often wondered after the documentaries aired, did they take a hit? Did they take a hit financially? Did they take a hit with memberships? What did it do to their reputation?
So, no, actually, so they were getting more sales. They were getting more people asking for coaching. They were presenting more of the older products again. I remember when Divine Dish came out. So I was a member of the cult. I don't think they knew how young I was. But I had joined Facebook a very long time ago. And right when I joined Facebook, in adolescence, I think, kind of like around the time that they started Divine Dish. I don't remember how young I was. That's how young I was. But I do remember them talking about Divine Dish. We just had this new product come out. It's called Divine Dish. It's to help you with your union. And I almost bought it too. Like this year when they reposted it again, I like literally almost bought it for myself because I was thinking, you know what? Because like at that point I wasn't eating. And I was eating like 1 meal a day and it was like 20, like there were 2 separate times where I thought about buying it. It was once in 2022 and once recently.
Were you a member? Were you still a member
I was
at
like,
that
I need
time?
low calorie meals. Yeah, because like I had heard about it and they were like, oh, well, they're high calorie meals, you know what I mean? And they are carb based, but they're really good and they're divine, you know what I mean? Like that's the whole point. And I was like, well, I kind of need something high in calorie once a day because I'm not eating. So that's why I thought about getting it for myself. And I didn't ultimately end up getting it because my coach at the time was actually warning me against it, which is crazy. But they had other products that they were like the coaching one-on-one sessions. They constantly are broadcasting it in the group. They had a summit recently that they were broadcasting. I never went to those. I don't know what they're like. I can't speak about that, but it's crazy how much how many products they have. And I actually gave them an idea, which I'm kind of feel weird about now, for a cookbook for Divine Dish. So, I mean, like, I was like really involved.
Can you explain to a little bit what the concept behind Divine Dish was and why they came up with it?
So they came up with it because they wanted to bring twin flames already in union, I believe, closer together by cooking. And so they thought by cooking delicious meals that were like godly, I guess, that they could bring people closer together. And actually, if you look at the testimonies, which I'm sure they paid people for, you know what I mean? Because they were saying, some people were saying I was allowed to try Divine Dish and like giving out testimonies. So like some people got to try it for free, I guess. So that's the basics of it though.
Okay. So you want to take us back to when you first joined Twin Flames?
Which time? The time where I got serious and started coaching, or when I was young? Got to be more specific, because there were multiple times where I went back and forth into the group. Okay. Why don't I talk about more recently and then go back in time? So recently, it was either, I can't remember the year. That's how many years I've been involved, but it was either, I think it was 2020, around April, May, June. It was right before I met Ron. My current partner. Well, we're exes now. We're not really together, but I don't know. It's a weird state. I don't know how. Anyways, moving on. It was right before I met him, and I was introduced to the group by someone who was like, I think we're twin flames. His life was falling apart, and I was the only one who was there for him during that time, because all of his friends had turned his back on him, and I was the one that was there. So during this time period, I was like, okay, I guess I gotta check this out. He's like, well, yeah, go ahead, check it out. Let me know what you think. And I started like looking into it, and I was like, there's no way. I was like, there's no way you can be my twin flame. Because like, and then like I had to explain everything. I was like, look, buddy, like reality check. We're nothing alike. And he's like, that's the thing. We are each other's like worst nightmare. And I was like, okay, that makes sense. But then like we broke up, and things got weird. And then I ended up basically getting into the metaphysical stuff, and my spiritual awakening happened. So like I was like, oh, maybe it is my twin flame at that point. I was like, because my awakening is happening, everything's going crazy. I was working for SeaWorld Resorts at the time. And I was so like, I wanted to explore this topic more. That's what got me into mediumship and psychic and all the stuff that I ended up doing, like crystals, like all that stuff. That's what sparked all that. So that was why I joined then. Before, when I was younger, honestly, it was so far back. I think it might have been like parent. It had to have been someone that told me about twin flames, because I was like super young, or I came across it on the internet. I don't know. I used to play around on YouTube a lot, so I don't really remember. Like, that's how young I was.
When you say really young, and I know you don't remember an exact age, can you give us like a time? Were you in high school? Were you out of high school? Were you middle school? How young are we talking? Just a time frame.
I want to say I was in like elementary school, like my last year of elementary school. Yeah, wow. I was super
that is
young.
Really young. Okay.
And I was like pretending to be someone actively older than I was.
Okay.
Which is a problem, but that's for my psychiatrist.
Right. but I'm sure at that time you probably weren't paying for classes or really giving money, I assume, because you didn't, I mean, you obviously didn't have a job. Okay.
So yeah. At that time, I was just like looking at stuff on the internet, and then I totally forgot about it for years. I was like, living my best life.
Okay.
And then high school came around, and then I revisited it and re-saw it again. High school, I was briefly involved with Nerdfighteria. And so I met people through the forum on Nerfiteria, and I was like, oh, maybe, because like I started looking more into Twin Flames that year. It was like my sophomore year when I decided to go to Monty-Tech, this technical school in Massachusetts, and that's when I found it again. And I don't remember if it was the Reddit group that I joined first, because I've been back and forth with that one too, or if it was actual TFU. It could have been either or, so bear with me because memory's foggy. But yeah, that was crazy. And then the mental issues started to happen. But I started, so do you guys have any questions about that? I don't know how you want to talk about that part.
How old are you now?
I am now 28 years old.
Okay. I interviewed a woman who rented a room in her house to the leaders of TFU, and that was around 2015 or 2016, I believe.
Does that sound
right?
Yeah, that does. Yeah.
Okay, so they hadn't.
So it was 2016, I think.
Right, so they hadn't officially launched as the Twin Flame. She told us that
really?
Well, what she said to us is that these, we'll call them John and Jane, the leaders, that they were making YouTube videos, talking about the concept, right?
Because that's when I started watching the videos, was in high school, and I started watching the YouTube from the TV in my mom's house. That was freshman year in high school, because like she lived in Lancaster, and when I was still going to Neshoba, I was a freshman, and then I moved over to Monty-Tech my sophomore year or my junior year, can't remember, long time ago. I'm old. There must have been, because here's the thing, Twin Flames and the concept have been around for a long time,
right?
Well, yeah,
it might not have been them when I was younger.
No, and I was going to bring that up. The Twin Flames concept is from the Greek mythology.
Yeah.
And I was approached by somebody on the other podcast, by a woman in England. And if anybody wants to go listen to the other podcast, the episode is still there. She had an issue with Twin Flames universe bastardizing the concept of the Greek mythology Twin Flames, because there's an actual concept. If you follow the Greek mythology, they weren't following it, apparently. They were making things up as they went along, or they had their own. Yeah.
They wanted to make money. So because they wanted to make money, they made all this stuff up. They were like, this is what Twin Flames really are. I'm the reincarnation of Jesus. You know what I mean? And he's like, I'm going to revolutionize it and like be different, and like this is what Twin Flames really are, because me and my partner actually found each other, you know. So, you know, and back then they were posting videos like together, the two of them. Like I remember the videos when they came out, and they were like outlandish videos. I was like, this is interesting. Like the stuff that they were encouraging people to do back then in the videos was kind of like insane. I was like, how can you encourage people to do this? I was young. I was really young when they first came out.
An example?
They showed some videos that I remembered in the documentary. Like I looked at the documentary and then I was like, I saw that video, right? Like when it came out, like, and like it was sparking memories, you know what I mean? They had one with the puppet. Like I remember that puppet that he bought. Like I remember when he was showing, like I think he must have shown it in a video or something. I can't exactly remember. Like there were just so many videos. Like it was all about like finding your twin flame, who is your twin flame, how to attract your twin flame. You know what I mean? And they were like, I want to say like 10-minute long videos. They were pretty short. I wish I had more.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know about these puppets, but that is a little concerning to me, that because that almost seems targeted at children. And I'm just going to say, but this isn't even a question. I'm just going to put a little red flag out there for parents. Make sure you're watching what your kids are viewing on YouTube, because they could be being influenced by these cults at a super young age and being specifically targeted And maybe they aren't going to join when they're a child, but they're going to come back because they remember that when they get older, just like Danielle was. She was exposed to this, obviously, when she was quite young. So I'm just going to throw that out there. I find that very interesting in a scary way.
Yeah.
Danielle, did the puppet intrigue you when you first saw it?
No.
I mean, it's okay. It's okay if it didn't.
It was just weird. It was weird.
Okay.
I was like, the leader's name, I was like, this is just insane. Like, the stuff that you're posting, like, is it real? But my mind, like, was just running around in circles. Like, is it real? Is it real? Like, I've got to find out. Like, because I was going through a lot of stuff. And that was the time where I started self-harming. And I was only, sorry to show, doing it here, but you can see there's very deep wounds from it, and I was self-harming. I got hospitalized several times, like shortly after I got exposed to all this. And like I said, I never had real mental issues other than ADHD diagnosed at age 5 until I became a teenager, and then old issues started coming out. So, you know,
and you
could
think
I
that's
say
a direct...
that they like caused my issues? I don't know.
I was just going to ask, do you think that was a direct correlation with your involvement? I have another question.
Yeah, I think the self-harming was.
Did you participate in the mirroring exercises? And if so, do you think that had anything to do with some of your mental health issues or your response to that? Was there any correlation there?
Yeah, I did do the mirror from a very young, like from when I was in high school. I was working it then. And it was difficult for me because I was like, wounds were being opened up that I didn't have a coach at the time, and I didn't have like a job or anything. So I couldn't afford a coach either. So I was doing this alone by myself, and like, it was just causing so much anxiety and stuff. And like, I was already going through it because I had a lot of drama going on in my friend group. And so that wasn't helping either. But between like the constant, oh, is he my twin flame, stuff like that, and then like, you know, it just was getting out of hand very quickly.
Meaning like causing obsessive thinking or obsessive thought patterns
obsessive
that were
thinking.
Not. Okay.
Yes.
And so
when did you officially become a member of TFU? At some point you must have either paid for a coach or paid for because I went to the website and you have to pay to watch these videos. So
yeah. So that was in 2022 during my mental health crisis, because at the time I thought, again, like maybe this is a twin flame, because like I never knew who mine was. And they weren't like helpful about like, oh, this is your twin flame, this isn't your twin flame. No, it wasn't like that at all. They let me bounce around and feel out that like all these other people were possibly a twin flame, and it's just all garbage. Like, you know what I mean? Like the labels, everything. Like I thought in 2022, oh, it's got to be my therapist. You know what I mean? And that's in adulthood, like the first time when it came back, and I thought maybe it's this person, and then I was like, maybe it's this person, and I bounced around for so long that year, and it made me act out and reach out to people in ways that I wouldn't have typically. And then I started hallucinating. Like it was weird. It was like all of a sudden, like I was thinking about things that really weren't like real. And it was just, it was as if I had like a demonic attachment on me or something. It was just crazy, outlandish behavior, like sending over 400 emails to my ex-friends. And that ended up blowing in my face because I ended up with 6 restraining orders in total.
Wow. And they were all affiliated. They were all affiliated with each other. Like these people pretty much knew, like not my therapist, but I lost. So in 2022, I got an opportunity to finally get an agent, and I was a member of GIAA.
which is a union affiliate. And so my agent got a restraining order, and my old theater company, all of them, both heads, and the theater company itself.
And this
So
was
it was
because of
crazy.
your obsessive
And my
behavior.
ex-therapist. Yes, because I was so obsessed. Like I kept reaching out, and like I was having like a colossal meltdown. It was a colossal meltdown about stuff they said didn't even happen. So it was just meltdown. It was like I lost it.
Were
Like,
any of the people that
completely
had
lost it.
restraining orders against you, were any of them deemed or did you believe were your twin flames?
Yeah,
Okay.
definitely the head of the organization I thought was at that point. And that wasn't even true, because like dude has a wife. Like I should have like the warning bells should have gone off. Like, he has a wife. She's probably his twin flame, probably not you. And see, I'm still like programmed to say, like, I'm just now working on deprogramming from all that BS. Like, I literally like believed in my core that things that weren't true were true. I was crying in my room. I was helpless. Plus, someone I sort of kind of knew for like a day or so died. And that was a lot, because I was like, I just saw you the day after you're dead. I was freaking out. Like, I completely lost my sanity. Like that, and that's why I started the coaching. Like, I became a part of the group during that. But like, that's why I started coaching. So I was like, I need help. I need to heal. I need to, and then like the mental hospitals, like it just got so out of hand. I went to 3 or 4 different hospitals that year.
Oh.
Let me ask you, what were they teaching either in the videos or through coaching that the concept of twin flame? So they're teaching something. How did you take that and say, okay, my theater coach is my twin flame because he or she met this criteria?
Right.
What was the criteria?
So here's the thing. The internet is a weird place, and you can find a million different criterias about friggin' twin flames. Like, you look up twin flame, what is it? Like, there, like a million different things will pop up. Like, I'm just telling you right now. So, like, your mind, if you read them all, you're like, eh. But they were like, oh, it's like your best friend, and you keep breaking apart and coming together again. And it's the person,
I remember that,
where you were like, this is your home, and like, this is the person who you're meant to be with. And they were like, your twin flame is the person that God designed for you to marry.
I remember that.
Like,
okay.
they're the other half of your soul. Like, they're exactly like you. They think like you. It's basically the male version of you. That's what they were saying.
Did they ever address, because when I did the pod series and I spoke to somebody in Australia who was following the actual Greek mythology twin flames concept, she said there were only 144,000 souls that would have a twin flame. Did TFU ever preach that, or they just ignored that?
They just ignored that. Their thing is everyone has a twin flame.
Everyone has.
I don't even, if I had to believe in twin flames again, I don't think that's true. I think there are people that are designed to be single in life, and God wants them to be single, and that is their mission in life, is to be single, because they can serve him better that way than with another person.
Okay, I want to go back just a minute with the restraining order stuff and your obsessive thinking or thought patterns you were having. Was that being encouraged or even suggested? Were they telling you to do that behavior, or were they encouraging that behavior in your coaching or any of that? Was that something they had a part in?
I will be honest with you. Like, I think after that happened, that particular coach did tell me go to a hospital. So, like, it depends on the coach. Some coaches will be like, oh, harass them, stalk them, go after them. Other coaches will be like, what are you doing? You know what I mean? And she was like, this is getting to be too much for you. You need to go to a hospital and get help. So I will credit that one coach, because they were very good about.
I appreciate
you
that.
need to be
That's,
seeing
and
a
that's good
therapist.
to
You
know.
need to be. Yeah, I'm trying to be honest about it. Because not all of the coaches were like that. It was only one coach towards the end of coaching who was encouraging me to like go after this person and like to pursue and like, oh, you got contact, like good. It's good that you got contact. Like
Right.
keep going, keep trying, keep showing up. That's all you can do. You know what I mean? And I
Right.
acted. I was like, oh, well, this isn't really happening. I was in serious denial.
I remember some of the videos that when I was doing this investigation back then, I was kind of struggling with whether or not to watch these YouTube videos because I didn't want to give them the following. And then I realized they already have thousands of followers. What am I going to make a difference?
Right.
And in the documentary, they showed where the leader, John, would encourage people to, up to a point, to shy of stalking because he didn't want to be responsible for anything legal, but he would encourage you in the video to go to any means necessary to contact that person.
To
That's
pursue
what
them.
happened to
Yep.
me. A
Correct.
lot of
Okay.
times it was being encouraged. It was just that specific time. It wasn't with that specific coach. But the other coaches were always like, yeah, go after them, like stalk them, like go harass them. You know what I mean? But that one coach was like, no, go to a hospital, you know? But then after that, like she didn't tell me you need to stop doing this right now. And like, we are banning you from the group and you can't do this because it's causing this behavior. No, like they kept taking my money and like kept, you know what I mean? It wasn't until 2024 where they were finally like, you need to do MAP. And that's a whole nother thing that I can talk about if you want me to.
Yeah,
Please.
I would like to. Yeah.
So MAP is a program that they created that was basically to help people get through their traumas. And apparently they would pay people for MAP testimonies. And I knew all this. Like I knew from watching the documentaries and stuff like that this wasn't a good route. They were like, oh, MAP can heal you. Like you're not having you're having a hard time finding a job. You're having a hard time in school. MAP can heal all of that. Pay $120 to us and we'll heal everything. It was like, remember in the documentary where he was like, oh, I'm the reincarnate of Jesus.
Yes.
I can heal cancer and all that stuff. It's the same concept, except it's called MAP. And he said it was developed by military people, like who were like therapists or something like that.
Does MAP,
but what
is,
I-
an,
what-
is that,
what I-
oh, is that an acronym? Acronym, does it stand for something? And if so, do you know what?
I don't know what it stands for, but I believe it's an acronym. Yes.
Okay.
And wasn't
Like,
there
something?
Okay.
I don't remember.
wasn't there a coach or somebody in the leaders circle that was from the military?
I heard about that. I never met them.
Okay.
At least I don't know who it is.
Okay.
So possibly.
Okay.
Yeah, she was in the documentary, and I remember they mentioned that she had a background in the military. I don't know if she was head of security or she was, I forget what her title was, but it's interesting you mentioned the military because he seems to borrow from the military.
Mm-hmm. Well, actually, the mirror method was developed from DBT techniques.
Yeah.
Crazy. And I figured that out later after I started like learning about DBT and like what it is a little bit. And there's a little bit of DBT involved with the mirror exercise. How you like say the emotion and then you list out, like you turn it on to yourself. Like that's kind of like the DBT way. I wish I could like pull it up, but like I'm too terrified that if I click out of something, like
Yeah,
this
I
will
don't
come
blame
in.
you.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things Melody and I have doing this podcast and talking to other ex-survivors or members of cults was a lot of these cults seem to borrow many different things. So, Melody, help me out here. There was,
Oh, I mean,
I don't know,
I'll
if it was
use
JW or
I'll use my cult as an example. My cult leader took a little bit of Judaism by following the 613 laws of the Old Testament. They also took a little bit of Christianity by saying, "Oh, we're going to believe in Christ, so we're going to put Christ in there." So, and then they also took a little bit from Scientology because they started causing or having people do confessions and keeping track and using it for blackmail. When people would leave, they would use that as blackmail against them. So just the Mormonism, they took the multiple marriage stuff from the Mormonism. They just grabbed whatever the leader decided he wanted at the moment. He would add it into the teaching.
So TFU was essentially doing the same thing. They seemed to borrow from DBT. They'd borrow.
Yeah. But they definitely program you because you start to have different terms like runner, chaser, twin flame, soulmate, karmic. Like they program your brain to think that this stuff is like all real and it exists and stuff like that. And it has been so hard to deprogram with therapy. Like I am in an outpatient right now, like deprogramming from being in the cult. And it has been like the hardest thing. Like I will get on session with my therapist and she'll be like, here's science and here's why this isn't real. And like after my sessions, I'll be like bawling my eyes out. Like I thought that this was so real. I thought it was like a thing. And then because it's like in my core, you know what I mean? And this was who I was for so long. Like it's
well,
like realizing it's not real. It's just crazy.
Danielle, don't beat yourself up too much. I mean, I understand you were brainwashed, but this is how good of manipulators they are.
Oh, they're great manipulators. Yeah. And I was completely brainwashed.
You and thousands or hundreds of thousands of others. All right. Mm-hmm. Would you take a guess as to how many people are actually members of TFU? Guesstimate. Just, are we talking 100,000, a half a million?
What was the last number you knew?
They've got a huge. They had before the documentary, I had more followers than them. And when I first joined, it was 25 point something thousand. And I had more already than they did. And now it's got to be somewhere, again, close to what I've got, which is like 34.6. Okay. I really don't know.
They have a lot of people.
They have like 50,000 people. I'm going to ballpark. And I want to say, like, I bet those coaches are making like $4,000 a month. Like, if I had to guess, like they're constantly in sessions and constantly busy.
Now, you bring up a good topic. So let's get into some of the nitty gritty of the internal working. So $4,000 a month is okay salary, depending on where you live in the United States. Like in New York City, you wouldn't get far, but maybe, in Arkansas you might, or Michigan. I don't know.
They all live in rural areas from what I know. Like
okay.
Tennessee,
so 4,000,
like Michigan, like,
Yeah. So that would go a long way, but do they get to keep that money?
Yes. So the money that, like, I know that a percentage from the bookings goes to the leaders, but I do know that the twin flame coaches are legitimately making bank off of twin flames.
I'm going to ask you a question. You don't have to answer this, Danielle, but I'm just curious. Have you, and you may not have even done this, have you added up how much, because this is aside from your sanity, your time, and the emotional toll this has taken on you. Have you ever tried to add up how much money you invested into them? And are you comfortable sharing
my mental health care? Oh yeah, between my mental health care, between the sessions, between everything, as much as a semester of college.
So
minimum, around,
10,
I want to say like 25,000, like at a private school.
Okay.
Because, like, listen, it was $5,000 for each mental hospital that I went to. That was 4 of them, 5, 10, 15, 20. Probably about $2,000 for coaching, right? So, like I said, about a semester's worth of college. I could have spent that on hypnosis and then solved all my problems.
And do you think you
because hypnotherapy has real results?
Yeah. And do you think you probably spent less than most members spend on like classes and buying into the products and stuff? Do you think most members spend even more than what you spent? Okay.
A member who is doing the summits regularly, a member who is doing the coaching regularly probably spends, and a member in Ascension School. Don't forget about that, because Ascension School costs $300 a month. I looked into it. I looked into that. It's $300 a month for 12 months. There are some members who have invested the full $4,000 package to become a coach, and legitimately, plus they have to do coaching while they're in that. Throughout the entire thing, you have to have weekly coaching, which is $75 to $150 an hour. Depending on the coach. Every coach has different rates.
Oh, really?
The ones higher up, it's around $120. I want to say you probably spend every 3 months or so $3,000 easy. Probably more than that, because I don't know how much the summit costs. I honestly never looked. Probably around $500.
And you're not even
get the Airbnb, which costs even more. Or a hotel room.
What's the Airbnb? So if they went to visit?
So I don't exactly know when you go to one of these summits if you have to get your own housing, but from what I've heard from one of the coaches, you have to get your own housing. So that 2 of the coaches apparently stayed in an Airbnb together. And it's other people too that'll rent out either Airbnbs, because sometimes they have it, from what I heard, at a an Omni resort type place. So you get a room and everything, but you have to pay for it. Kind of like when you go to an Al-Anon conference or something.
Right.
I'm not trying to compare Al-Anon to TFU. It's a completely different thing.
No.
But when you go to any kind of a conference, there's usually the room that you got to pay for, and then the physical conference itself. It's the same kind of thing.
I'm just going to say that I live in Michigan, and I'm actually part of a Facebook group for the Traverse City area. And I do know that the last one, which was June 15th, was held in the Traverse City area, and it was held, part of it was at Great Wolf Lodge. So I'm sure that, and I know that's not
that's
cheap,
what I thought. Yeah, I knew it was a resort
to stay. So I'm sure that is expensive. I don't know how many days that summit lasts, but yes, I'm sure it's not cheap.
Wasn't it a week?
I'm not sure. I don't know that. I didn't have that information. I just know part of it was held at Great Wolf Lodge. The other part was held at Hickory Hills.
See how many people were there? It was over 200 people. They had that conference room packed to the brim.
Yeah, I didn't know that either. I'd seen some images, but I didn't get it. I never heard a number thrown out, but that's interesting, because that's a fair amount for people at least traveling and coming to one area to gather. And yeah, it's interesting concept of all of that. I just was curious more of how much money you thought you had, because that they did focus a lot on that in the documentaries about how much money they were getting from these members. Were investing all this money because they were being promised all these things that were never really coming to pass for them.
The leaders are millionaires. I can tell you that. They're millionaires. They live in a mansion. They host conferences sometimes at their mansion, from what I know about. So they make bank.
Yeah. Well, you could see, in the documentary, they show his 2 very expensive luxury cars, and even had a pair of sunglasses that he only wore. All right. We're going to do this interview with Danielle in 2 parts. So there's a second part that we haven't even touched yet, and I want to save that for part 2. But I'm going to end this one with one question that hasn't been brought up yet, but it was in the documentaries, and I would like to see your take or hear your take on it. in the documentary, there were family members that couldn't talk to their either daughters or sons or brothers or sisters. They were alienated. How much of that did you see, and was it orchestrated on purpose?
It happened to me. When I started doing coaching, my entire family wouldn't talk to me, and I felt very isolated. They stopped inviting me to holidays and stuff like that. They kind of viewed me as crazy. And I will tell you, I have a family member who just had a baby, and I'm not allowed near that child because they think that I'm mentally insane.
Now, were they encouraged? What about the other way around? Were you encouraged
The other way
from
around.
the group? Were you encouraged from
Yeah.
the group to disassociate yourself from your family members?
I was about my mom. They did, because my mom was abusive to me as a kid, they did encourage, like, maybe you shouldn't talk to your mom because, like, she's causing you all this stress at one point.
Oh, okay. We
So-
did not know that. Yeah.
Now, just out of curiosity, are you back in contact with your mom now?
Oh, yeah, now I am.
Okay.
But I have been for a while, since I had to go to jail for what happened to me, which we haven't even touched base on that part.
Right.
And what happened to get me there.
And I think
with that
that's
last coach that I worked with.
I think that's a great way to leave and segue into part 2. So if you want to hear
Right.
Danielle's story of how and why she went to jail because of this organization,
That's exactly what I was leading
you're
up
going
to.
to come
Yep.
back to part 2 to hear that because I'm sure it's interesting. So stick around.
I
for
can't
part
wait
2.
to hear it.
So, well, thank you so much, Danielle. We're highly interested in hearing part 2 of your story.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I am very excited to share the rest of what happened to me. I really
Excellent.
hope that this helps someone either come forward or leave,
I love that. Yep.
All right. Stay tuned for part 2.
Yes. Well, Andrew, I hope everybody is excited to come back and listen to part 2 of Danielle's story. She did an excellent job sharing as much as she did, but she goes into a lot more detail about where being in this group led her. And we already kind of mentioned that at the end of the episode, which is in jail, and how is she going to handle that? How does that turn out for her? And so come back next week to find out what that entails for her.
What I found interesting, and it confused me at first, was when Danielle contacted us, or we were in talks about her coming on the podcast, she had talked about being in jail. If you remember in the documentary, one of the documentaries, there was somebody had done something similar. They were
Yes.
prosecuted for stalking,
Yes.
which was very similar to what Danielle
Danielle's
went
story.
through. She found somebody that she believed was her twin flame, and they were teaching her that this person, if you find them or they meet the criteria, pursue them at whatever cost.
Right.
And while I believe the leader, we'll stick to what she asked us not to mention their names. The leaders will distance themselves from that, so
Right.
they can't get blowback on the prosecution. But it seems to be Danielle's not the only one. It has happened before. Other people have
Right.
gone to the
No.
extreme to find their twin flame, which is just not how it works.
Right. No. And
No.
it shows a pattern of behavior that being in this group can cause someone to do, and it's not an isolated incident.
Right.
And
no, not at all.
And that I would hope that, well, we'll talk about that after her next episode, because I don't want to give too much away about what the set part 2 is about.
Right. Yeah,
So-
no, that's the whole idea.
Yes,
Listen
exactly.
to part 2.
So come back. I'm holding my tongue here, audience. So, but we want to thank Danielle so much for coming on the show, for telling her story. And as always, we want to thank all of you for tuning into Cultimatum. Thank you, and your support is so greatly appreciated. Please, if you can take a moment to rate our podcast on platforms such as Apple and Spotify, and if you could leave us a review on Apple as well, we would greatly appreciate that. And don't forget to follow, share, and keep listening to all of our latest episodes.
You can also show your support by joining our Facebook community group called Cultimatum. If you'd like to share your story with us, you can email us at cultimatumpodcast gmail.com.
And we have expanded our social media platforms to include Pinterest, Instagram, and TikTok, and you can find us on all of those platforms. For additional support and resources for ex-cult members, consider joining the Cult Escape and Recovery group on Facebook.
And if you'd like to hear more of me, you can find me at my other podcast, or the original one that started all this is the Anonymous Andrew podcast. And I dropped a doozy of a weekend rant today. So if we have any cross listeners, go head over to Anonymous Andrew and check out the 4th of July weekend rant. And Melody, thank you. We'll see you next week.
Yes, sounds good, Andrew.